Today, we are going to help you understand homeowners insurance by dispelling 5 common myths. This is According to Amber. Thank you for joining us today on According to Amber. We are going to talk about homeowners insurance, and I have my friend Cindy Jessup here, who is the owner of her own agency with First Priority Insurance. And I think that with insurance, the reason I feel like it's so important is when I, as a lender, tell people, hey, you need to go find homeowners insurance, there's almost this deer in the headlight and they don't exactly know what to do. The process can be very intimidating if you haven't had homeowners insurance before. So Cindy, I appreciate you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely.
And I want to start with, why do you think homeowners insurance or insurance in general is so intimidating?
I think it's a foreign language to people. They just don't understand. The best way to purchase insurance is to have a qualified agent with you and have the agent guide you. But when people look at options or their loan officer says, go get insurance, they do panic because there are a lot of companies out there, and unfortunately sometimes the companies are saying different things.
Yeah, and again, that is why we're here today, is to dispel some of those myths. You know, many consumers nowadays tend to do a lot of shopping online, but even shopping online can steer you in a direction that may not work out the best for you. So let's go ahead and dive into these myths. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, so myth number 1 is homeowners insurance is all the same and it doesn't really matter which company I go with.
So what's the same about it is regulated by the state.
Okay.
So there's a basic policy that every company has to offer. What's different is what the companies may exclude or what they may add to the policy based on the agent's preference. The agent pushes the button to make the choice of what the person will have, and if the agent doesn't discuss it with the client, then they have no clue.
So an exclusion would mean something that is not covered, whereas additional coverage or something would be an addition to the policy for a unique situation, right?
Absolutely.
Is that the best way to do it?
Absolutely.
Good, so it really does matter then when you are looking around in insurance companies. It's good to ask different types of questions to understand what type of insurance you're getting. Perfect, I love that. Okay, myth number 2, I am fully covered no matter what happens.
Oh, that is probably the biggest myth because I literally hear that every single day. It's never true with any kind of insurance.
Okay.
So a basic insurance policy will cover your property. But if there's an exclusion, then the insurance company can say, well, we'll only cover it in certain circumstances. And that's why you want to make sure that the agent has written the policy with every potential peril. It's called special perils.
Okay.
Because then you will have coverage for almost everything. But there are coverages like earthquake and flood, water sewer backup. There's a lot of coverages that are not automatically included in any policy with any company. And again, you need a professional agent who understands those things, who will have the conversation with the customer so that they'll be able to make educated choices about what they need for their insurance policy.
Well, what I find, and again, you're the professional, but what I find is that of those perils that are listed, you know, and regulated by the state as far as standard coverages go, very rarely do people have those things happen to them. It's always kind of the off, you know, the client that a windstorm came up and had a trampoline blow into her house. That's not one of the perils that is listed as a requirement to be covered. So that's the type of thing that you want to be talking to your agent about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You couldn't talk about every potential scenario, but the agent knows what clients need, and they know what clients need in certain areas, because there might be an area where they've had problems with the sewer lines. Sewer lines are not an insurance issue. But an agent can add a rider that will help with coverage if a sewer line does back up into their basement.
That's a good
So
point.
there's
Really good point.
if you're working with an older home, they should have that rider on their policy. If it costs $50 a year more, that is worth every penny of it, because then if something does happen, they can rely on insurance instead of having to come up with say $10,000 on their own to pay for that claim.
Perfect.
So they thought everything was covered, but I see it all the time where they don't really have all-inclusive coverage. It's not possible.
Well, and that kind of leads me into myth number 3 when you suggest an older home. Myth number 3 is my insurance will be less expensive if I buy a cheaper home, which is usually an older home, than it will be a new home. Is that true or false?
That is false. Older homes tend to have more claims, right? More can happen because things are wearing out. And so it's possible an older home would cost more to insure than a newer home. I had a home in Lehigh that would sell for $400,000, but the construction cost on it was only $170,000. I had a house in Ogden that was worth $150,000, but the rebuild was $400,000 because of the age of the home and because of the exterior had a lot of little special, what's it called, like molding, but that's on the inside, but on the outside of the home, it had a lot of character,
Yeah.
like a Victorian home.
Yeah.
And definitely costs more to insure because the goal is to replace it to the state it was in before the event happened.
Well, and I think that brings up a really good point, especially in the market that we are in. In fact, it kind of almost goes back in the process of home buying back to almost your real estate agent. In fact, when you're looking at an agent is showing you different types of homes and, you're probably just falling in love with this old Victorian, you're not thinking of, oh yeah, that trim was manufactured in 1925. Right. We're not going to be able to replace it without an artisan getting involved.
Right.
So, I think it does go back to just understanding where you're at in the process and getting the right people lined up at the right time. If you already had a relationship with an insurance agent that you knew and trust, you could call them up and say, hey, I'm looking at this house. Could you give me an idea of what I should be worried about? And an agent, such as yourself, would be able to say, well, have you thought about this? We may need to look at this. Make sure the home inspector looks at this, especially on an older home. I completely agree with you. New construction is much easier to insure and sometimes can be cheaper just because it fits all the boxes right now.
And
right?
Insurance companies have actuaries who run statistics. Statistically, older homes have a lot more claims than newer homes. So a lot of the pricing will be based on what's happened in the past.
Okay. Good. Great. Well, myth number 4. So once the cost of my policy is set, it will always be that way and I can never change it. True or false?
You can make changes to a policy whenever you choose to.
Okay.
It doesn't cost you anything. And actually, agents are taught to do annual reviews. So every agent should annually go over their client's policy to make sure it's still the best fit for them. Because you gain information in a year's time and something could change or need to be added. For example, someone goes out and buys a $10,000 ring. Well, that can be added as a rider to your homeowner's policy, but it's not automatically covered at its value on any policy. So those conversations are really important so that clients can make changes as needed, and an agent should definitely be involved. And another example is, say someone starts working home daycare. They start a daycare in their home. That really changes a policy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, you can make changes whenever you need to. So in the event of buying a home, people are really busy, they're signing lots of papers and they're really overwhelmed and confused. It could be a really good idea to sit down with the agent after the home has been purchased and they've moved in, and then go over the details so that they really understand it, because it is complicated and it's not something you just learn the first time you talk about it.
Well, and I think that a lot of times too, when people are setting coverage, you always talk about things that could increase the cost of the premium because you're adding to it. But isn't there things that you could do that could possibly decrease the cost as well?
Absolutely. Some people get discounts for things like adding an alarm system that reports to the police and fire. They get discounts for solar panels in a way.
But there are
discounts.
Yeah.
There are opportunities. And again, agents know what those opportunities are, and they can put that on the policy to save the client some money. Deductibles are another way that you can change the cost of a policy. The client just needs to be informed. I see all too often where agents make changes, like increase the deductible to get the price of the policy down, but the client has no idea. And then they have a claim and they realize, oh no, I just learned I have a $1,500 deductible.
Yeah, and I would usually with my clients, what I counsel them to do is just to kind of look at it big picture and decide, okay, what's the very most that you would be willing to pay out of pocket if you had a water leak or something like that? Because, you know, on one hand, you know, you don't want to pay a lot out of pocket should that happen. You'd love to have insurance cover it, but at the same time, if you're willing to pay a little bit more, it will keep the premium down, and then also you may even not need to make a claim necessarily unless it is something major, because you don't want to have your rates go up in the future because of needless claims.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
The idea is not to make a claim if you can help it.
If you can help it, yeah.
But
yeah.
what
But it is there if you need it.
It is, and an agent can run the cost for one deductible and another deductible, and the client can make that decision.
Yes.
It may be worth paying $80 more a year to have a lower deductible.
Yes.
It's all up to them.
Up to them, perfect. Okay, myth number 5. My insurance coverage really only needs to be for the actual cost of the house. True or false?
I don't know where people get that idea. That is really crazy. As professionals, we actually have cost evaluation reports. We put in a lot of information that we can get off of an appraisal or off of the county assessor's website. Mm-hmm. We actually have a system where we determine what the rebuild amount is on that home.
Okay.
And I once saw a home where a couple had $100,000 in equity. They bought a new home, added that equity, and they insured the home for like $150,000, and it should have been $250,000.
Yeah.
Agents can catch those kind of mistakes, but it's really a big deal to have it properly insured for what it would cost to rebuild it should something happen, and it's not always the number you think.
Right, right. Well, and a lot of times, unfortunately, I have had friends that have had homes that have caught on fire and different things, and going through and rebuilding a home on a restoration builder with a restoration builder is even a different process than going through and building a home with a general home builder. They're two different processes. Insurance handles it different, and so it absolutely is very important, to your point, that you know your agent, you know the type of insurance you have. And I know you said you possibly can't have answers for everything, but I would encourage our people watching this or people that are shopping for insurance to go have a sit down with the person that you're considering, get to know who they are as a person, and then ask them those questions and say, so, if I had a trampoline blow into the side of my house, am I covered, right?
Most questions are things they've seen that happen to other people.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
And then agents know what claims are the most common. What I think is the most important thing is have a relationship with an agent. Call the agent before you make a claim, because they will tell you how to word the claim and how to handle it, which saves a lot of time and potentially money in the long run.
Yeah, very good advice, very good advice. Well, hopefully this information will help you have a more effective conversation with your agent as you're looking to get homeowners insurance. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, houses don't build communities, you do.